Welcome to This Got Me Thinking, where clarity comes from conversations and the ideas that spark from it. My name is Chris LaFay, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Richard Sims. And as an agency owner, I know very well, and I'm sure you who are listening do as well too, the fear that is the toxic client, right? And the toxic client is, typically speaking, always the one that's bringing in a significant amount of revenue into the business, and you're willing to put up with just a little bit more to keep them around. And that's the story that Richard was talking about today. And he had this really interesting learning experience that combined the starting up of his business back in the earlier days, the uncertainty of COVID, a client representing a third of their revenue, and a pregnant wife. I'll let him tell the story. So talk to me about the base of this challenge that you were faced. I know it was something to do with a client and whatnot. So kind of, paint the initial picture for me.
Yeah, for sure. So I think your kind of thought-provoking question was just some challenge that you've overcome in the business and what impact it had on you and the team. And this kind of always comes to mind, like this particularly challenging dynamic that we navigated with a client during a very challenging time. And, I have to preface, these are kind of the, housekeeping obligatory, like, we've had a lot of clients over the last 9 years, right?
Really?
And I'm grateful for all of them. Big, small, different shapes, sizes, different types of projects. And clients come in a lot of different forms, right? And it's like, there are challenging clients, which is not necessarily bad. That can be great. Sometimes they push you hard and they take you in a new direction and they get your team rallying around something or getting through something quicker than you really thought you could. There are just difficult clients, which is also not necessarily bad. Just different personality types, different company cultures that companies are kind of bringing to the table naturally, and just demanding clients where you're working in good faith. They are pushing you. Maybe like the personalities are a little difficult, but there's mutual respect and it pushes you to a good place, right? So there's a huge spectrum here. Now, I also think there are toxic clients and there are bad clients. And there's not a lot of good there. It doesn't mean they're bad people, but there are, frankly, toxic clients that do a lot more harm than good, even if it's a lucrative engagement. So that's kind of where this story stems from. And so I suppose to set the scene, when this happened for us, part of what made it so hard was this was like right during COVID. We were still a pretty young business. It was a scary time for a million reasons. And certainly I think everyone was scared, but small business owners were scared, right? And I think like looking back, we came through COVID a lot less like disrupted than we could have been, or maybe than other companies were. And so I think with this particular client, it just made us that much more scared to lose them and made us kind of put up with more than we should have. And that's really on me. So I think that's where the leadership element comes in and why it was such a struggle for me, because I was very conflicted, right?
Yeah.
And so just the long and short with this particular client was that, they were really getting increasingly hostile with our team in meetings, like increasingly confrontational, like, truly being rude, demeaning to a degree. It was clearly too much. It wasn't so far over the line that it was like immediately we're going to throw our hands up. But it kept going, and we were working very hard for this client. And of course, I stand by the work we did. We're not perfect. I'm sure in some instances their frustrations were valid, but it was obviously not constructive. And what was very hard, and of course, I'm not sharing names, and this organization's not based in Atlanta, and I sincerely wish them well, right? It just was a tough situation. But what was really hard was like, it was mainly their CEO, I suppose, because this was a relatively small business. And so I kind of started hearing whispers of this and, folks on the team like raising alarm bells, or a project manager being like, listen, like, I think this is kind of getting out of hand. And it was mostly engineers staffed on the project at that point. And like, to their credit, I suppose, most of them like just weathered it and took it in stride. But I know it was really starting to beat them down, right? Because, when you're working that hard on something and like all you're getting is negativity and accusations, and obviously that's just a major risk for people burning out and not doing quality work. And what was really hard was like, I would periodically try to join these calls to try to play middleman or like mitigate this a little bit. And it wouldn't happen when I was on the call. I think this guy kind of knew that like he needed to tone it back a bit with me, which like kind of didn't help things, because like I wasn't able to just like be there and show support in the way I needed to. And I think what compounded all the anxiety about this was a few things. I mean, one, again, COVID, we're freaked out, we're a small business. This is a pretty lucrative client for us at the time. And, we were in the like classic small agency fear zone where it was like this client was making up like a third of our revenue, which of course the advice is like, don't do that. Don't get yourself in that situation, which is good advice, but come on, like we've all been there. It's like, if you get a big client, you want the business, there's risk when it starts to take up that much of your bandwidth, but like, it's not like you want to like rock that boat unnecessarily. Right. But that certainly added to the pressure. And I started getting, very worried about the folks on that project, that they were going to burn out and quit. Right. And just as a business owner, I didn't want that, because they were great people. And as a leader, like I sincerely cared about these people. And as a leader, I was like so guilty, because I was like, you shouldn't be letting someone treat your team members like this.
On the continuum of like people pleasing to, on the other side of that, what is the opposite of people pleasing? Arrogant, and you feel like you're right all the time, I guess. I don't know. I've never actually thought about what that is on a continuum before. Where do you fall?
Well, of course I have to say I'm not at the far end of arrogant.
That's good. Good.
No, I mean, I'm not an arrogant person, and I'm like pretty introverted even despite my role, but I have a lot of empathy and all of those things. So like, you I'm sure experience this with clients. It's like there's a balance. Like I want to please them, of course, but you don't want to overpromise, and you don't want to put your team in a tough spot based on that. So in this instance, I did have a few conversations with this guy, like telling him he needed to tone it down a little bit. I would have been like more full-throated about it, but I really didn't want to just blow up the relationship. It didn't really have an effect, And I think in this instance, like there are just different ways people do business, right? Some people push and are aggressive, and like that's how they can get results. I mean, I guess that's a little more old school. I don't really subscribe to that belief, and it certainly doesn't work for our team. Like you want people to feel motivated and a sense of urgency, but like not scared to get on a call with you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like, I know for me, like when I'm hearing you talk about all this, like I'm visualizing this in my mind, and I am a people pleaser. So on that continuum, I am far on the people pleasing side.
Yeah.
And with that also, I'm very much conflict avoidant as well. I'm very much a like, let's suck it up and deal with it. And that's not a healthy thing either. So just like we laughed about like being on the arrogant side of that continuum, there's this huge negative side of being a people pleaser as well too. And I'm really into like you actually took matters into your own hands a handful of times and kind of led the conversation a couple of times before you actually pulled the plug. You didn't just sit on your hands. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you. I mean, you're giving me too much credit. I think I let a lot more slide than I should have. And then here's like kind of the real kicker of like how this ended up. They ended up firing us. So it all went downhill and blew up anyways. And the craziest thing about it was like the guy called me the night before my wife was going to be induced with our son. And he knew too. He knew that it was the next day and he wanted to catch me before I was out on paternity leave. So I was like, thanks, dude. I guess I'll deal with this in a couple of weeks. And, you know, life has a way of like working out. And it was like within a month, we had landed a bunch of new business that like easily filled that gap. And I don't know if that's karma or what, but it's stuff that was more fun, better, you know, more diversified for us, right? And it was stuff we wouldn't have had like the bandwidth to take on. And I think we were so distracted by all of this. So like, you know, it certainly taught me to like act more quickly in those scenarios and have faith that making the right decision will work out and that you'll kind of save face with your team and like demonstrate you're standing up for what you say you believe in.
How did this particular experience shape how you bring on new clients in the future at that point? Because I'm assuming now your lens of how you filter the good versus bad fit changed drastically because of this.
Yeah, for sure. I think for one thing, there was a bit more of like trust your gut in some of your initial interactions with a prospect. And again, I don't want to seem harsh or judgmental. I just mean like if you can tell someone is not a great fit or their style is not really going to jive with yours, like trust that. And it doesn't necessarily mean you need to turn them away, but you need to like think hard about it and mitigate it somehow. I think what we did well after that too is like we got a lot more dogmatic, not just because of that client, but just generally in our evolution as a business. Like we got a lot better about, for lack of a better word, educating clients that are coming in on our process, how we run projects, what their expectations should be, how and when we're going to update them. And of course, like some of those things are malleable, but I think we just got a lot more rigid, for lack of a better word, about dictating like, this is how we run these projects. If you're coming on, know and make sure that you're generally comfortable with that. And there's an element there too that's like, just comes with time and confidence, where it's like, we've been doing this a long time. We've got a good playbook. We know how these teams need to come together. We know how like the project needs to be run and all the moving pieces. And for the most part, like we are going to be in the driver's seat on that.
Here's the question. What is the thing you are afraid to lose that is actually holding you back? And the thing is, we can all probably look at Richard's story and check most of the boxes that he checked. Maybe not the whole, like, my best client or my biggest client fired me the day before I had a child. Maybe not that one. But there's other more nuanced things that this could take, that could have an impact like this that might not be noticing. A, is there a team member that's actually holding the rest of your team back or even your clients back? Is there an opportunity that's in your pipeline that doesn't really feel like the best fit and you're willing to take on that project and it not being the best fit rather than referring it out to somebody else that is a good fit? Also, when you're looking at your client work and the work that you're doing for other people, are you not going deep enough? Because the funny thing is when you go deeper with client work and you go deeper into the strategy side of things, there's a huge risk there. Because if that strategy component is wrong, you risk the contract. It's not as safe as we're just going to help you manage your website or manage your social and kind of check the boxes off. And there's all these different mindset pieces of what are you afraid to lose, and whether it's losing something tangible or whether it's losing out on something in the future. Shifting your mindset to thinking through, how does this decision then impact longer term outcomes, is a huge shift to make. And so I challenge you to think through, not just, should I go fire my toxic client? Perhaps you should, but think about it across all different spectrums of what you might be missing out on. That's what Richard got me thinking.